PSG reach back-to-back UCL finals as UEFA face serious backlash. Meanwhile, Real Madrid's infighting is getting out of control. Brazil's star boys in a race against the clock to recover for the World Cup. And FIFA's president shamelessly lies about their ticket prices. This is DMAC Daily. This UCL second leg might just be the most deceptive scoreline in football history. Let me explain. Now, everyone was understandably in awe of last week's 5-4, right? For many, it was actually viewed as the most entertaining 90 minutes or so in modern football history. It was always going to be a tough act to follow, but I'd argue leg 2 of Bayern PSG was just as entertaining. Both teams came out with an identical approach. Attack, attack, attack. When Dembele hit the front within 3 minutes, it felt like another goal fest was imminent. However, it surprisingly took an additional 90 minutes or so for the ball to end up at the back of the net once more. At face value, you'd think it was perhaps an underwhelming game of football, but in reality, it was the furthest thing from that. In fact, there were even more shots in this match than last week's encounter. The only difference today was that both teams were incredibly wasteful in front of goal, and that the keepers showed up big time. Safonov coming up with 5 saves, whilst 40-year-old Neuer delivered a timeless display, 6 saves in total. It's a shame his attacking teammates were not at the races today because they couldn't hit a barn door. Elise, a man who hadn't put a foot wrong all season previously, fell short when it mattered most, whilst Musiala's shooting was abysmal, and ultimately, I thought PSG deserved to prevail on the night. Their front three caused persistent problems. Dembele got the goal, but Doué and Kvaratskhelia were at their electrifying best. They are so direct, so relentless in their chance creation. You love to see it. Kvara in particular, bro, this guy is a menace. 6 from 6 dribbles completed, 4 chances created, 11 from 15 duels won, and 7 passes into the final third. Defensively, it was also a much improved display. No Hakimi, but Zaire Emery put in a shift in his absence. Pacho went on to pick up man of the match honors after another heroic performance. At what point do we recognize this guy as genuinely world class? Because I feel like he doesn't have that global reputation just yet. Like if he were French or if his last name was Pacino or something, he'd almost certainly be perceived as a top 5 center back worldwide. Understand, he is one of their most important signings of all time. Since joining, he's played every UCL game these past 2 seasons. Before he joined, he'd only had 1 season in Europe. Such a reliable performer. Although there is a legitimate argument to be made that today's man of the match wasn't any PSG or Bayern player, but rather the referee in charge, João Pinheiro. Now, whilst I recognize that it is more often than not counterintuitive to hyper-focus on subjective decisions, like it feels reactionary to complain about the refs, but objectively, the officiating today was really poor. Now, I want to clarify, I've heard multiple conspiratorial angles. One, that he's Portuguese and he was secretly rooting for PSG because of their Portuguese contingency. Like, take the tinfoil hat off, because that's a load of nonsense. Reminder, Bayern also have a Portuguese player too. I also completely disagree with Thiago's take that's done the rounds. He's someone that I really do respect, but his belief that UEFA are solely conspiring against German teams is absurd. Bad decisions are inevitable in a subjective sport like football. One thing we can agree on though is that there were some howlers today for sure. Now everyone is raging about the Nuno Mendes potential second yellow not being awarded. I'm not so sure it warranted another booking personally. However, the actual foul went against Bayern for a handball on Lima that came off his midsection. That was a poor mistake, but the penalty shout afterwards is genuinely egregious stuff because UEFA are not applying universal standards of the handball rules. Ironically, I don't actually think this is a penalty. In fact, neither do IFAB, who literally make the rules. However, UEFA made it very clear they don't abide by their interpretations regarding handballs. Case in point, last week, a penalty went against Bayern, even though it contradicted IFAB's own rulebook. Yet this week, they uphold IFAB's laws for a similar handball offense. Just ridiculous stuff. UEFA need a reform of their rulebook because there is no transparency or consistent application of the laws here. I feel like a football lawyer right now, but the double standards are astounding. I'm not critiquing PSG here at all, by the way, but ultimately a dodgy penalty is what separated the two sides over 180 minutes. I think that's a bit of a shame, really. Referee/VAR drama aside though, the reigning champions have now reached the final for a second straight season, a rematch of last season's semi-final. Arsenal will be gunning for vengeance while PSG will be desperate to defend their title. It's such a compelling clash, 2 Spanish tacticians with contradicting philosophies. Certified banger, no doubt about it. Speaking of Spain, and in probably the least surprising news of today, Real Madrid are crashing out again. Recently, a clip went viral showing Rudiger slapping a member of their coaching staff. Now that fizzled out relatively quickly until another slapping incident was reported shortly after, alleging that the German struck fellow teammate Alvaro Carreras. Carreras has since come out with a statement somewhat downplaying the severity of it, but within that same 24-hour window, separate reporting emerged, this time from The Athletic, suggesting that Mbappe was involved in a heated dispute with a member of their coaching staff with inflammatory language hurled towards the trainer. Okay, 2 incidents, maybe it's just a random coincidence. I was leaning towards that opinion too, until another incident came to light involving a training ground bust-up between Fede Valverde and Aurelien Tchouameni. According to reports, the pair were involved in a heated confrontation during training on Wednesday, with the argument beginning near the end of the session before continuing inside the dressing room. This is insane stuff. Valverde is one of the club captains, and he's actively getting into a physical altercation with a fellow key senior player. This only goes to show that the problem is so much deeper than Kylian Mbappe alone, because this entire club is rotten to the core. It's egomaniacal beyond belief. The level of entitlement that festers within this cohort of players is diabolical. Ancelotti was somehow able to keep the peace. Alonso then tried to instill a unified, discipline-first approach, and it backfired tragically. Arbeloa was then the short-term band-aid fix that, unsurprisingly, has not worked. Now, when I heard the Mourinho rumors, I thought, surely not. His arrival is the last thing they need, right? But with every tumultuous headline that comes out, I'm starting to be of the opinion that, you know what, maybe this special one is the answer. He won't be afraid to take on the player power dynamics that are sabotaging this club. He did it previously with Casillas. He also stood up to CR7 on more than one occasion too. Basically, no player will be safe from the wrath of Jose, and I think that's a good thing for Madrid at this point. Moving to South American football news, and Seleção star Estevao is facing a race against time to be fit for the World Cup after suffering a serious grade 4 hamstring injury just a couple weeks ago. The 19-year-old pulled up during a Premier League fixture for Chelsea before later undergoing scans, which revealed one of the most severe types of muscle tears a footballer can sustain, a grade 4 hamstring strain. Initial fears inside Brazil and England suggested the injury could sideline him for up to 6 months and potentially require surgery. However, more recent reports claim Estevao is pursuing a conservative treatment instead, hoping to avoid surgery and keep alive his slim chances of making Brazil's World Cup squad. Despite his age, Estevao has rapidly become one of the first names in Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil plans. Since making his senior international debut in 2024, he has earned 11 caps and scored 5 goals, with 4 of those strikes coming in his last 4 appearances. Before the injury, he was widely viewed as a shoo-in to be on that plane. Understand at Chelsea, he's still somewhat a squad player, whereas with Brazil, he's a far more influential figure. It's sad to think that an emerging gem of the game could be set to miss this tournament, but his injury woes also come as no surprise. The teenager has already played well over 100 senior matches for club and country, despite only just turning 19. This is now his 3rd muscle-related setback of the season too, so I do worry about the long-term consequences of simply rushing him back into action. Obviously, every young Brazilian dreams of representing their country at the World Cup. It'd be devastating for the Wonder Kid to miss out, but he's got to be realistic about his decision too. Switching gears from someone I adore to someone I actively despise, and old mate Gianni Infantino is doing Gianni Infantino things. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know full well at this point that the pricing for literally anything related to this World Cup is beyond outrageous. In terms of the tickets themselves, transport to and from games, accommodation, it's completely cooked. Basically, unless you're swimming in cash, this tournament ain't for you, little bro. FIFA has understandably faced extensive criticism from haters like myself, but also credible voices too, such as the group Football Supporters Europe, who referred to FIFA's ticket pricing policies as both extortionate and a monumental betrayal of football fans alike. Speaking at the Milken Institute conference in LA, Infantino attempted to justify FIFA's pricing strategy further by claiming even college football tickets in America start start at around $300. The problem here is that Google exists, and a simple search shows that's not remotely true. Tickets for many college football games can be found for a fraction of that price, while even some major professional sports events remain far cheaper than what FIFA is actively charging for World Cup matches. But the hypocrisy runs even deeper than inaccurate comparisons, right? FIFA spent decades criticizing ticket scalpers and secondary market exploitation, yet the organization itself now directly profits from inflated resale prices through its own official resale platform, reportedly taking a 30% commission on resold tickets. Now, Infantino unironically then argued that FIFA had to overcharge and implement their own resale platform to prevent individuals from doing so. Quote, "We are in the market in which entertainment is the most developed in the world, so we have to apply market rates. If you were to sell tickets at the price which is too low, these tickets will be resold at a much higher price." Poor FIFA, they simply had no choice but to implement outrageous prices and prevent resale scams by implementing their own. The grift is so transparent. Even for FIFA, this is unbelievable. The World Cup is supposed to be built on the idea of global accessibility, the whole world coming together for the beautiful game, embracing different cultures and backgrounds, with free and accessible transport for the fans that pay all this money in the first place to make the event what it is. But this right here, this is an abomination of greed. Like, I personally don't think the world hates Gianni Infantino nearly enough. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This man is a literal villain. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. I'll see you next time.